days to find out.
กล่องจะลง
Not food, surprise, food thing, surprise and surprise.
Well, there can be good surprises and not so good surprises. You can be surprised to find out that your best friend left town and didn't tell you. But most of the time, a surprise is a good thing. But there can be unpleasant surprises. You can be surprised by some bad news. But most of the time, if it's bad, it's stunning or shocking. The bad news would be shocking. Oh, I was shocked to find out that that accident occurred just across the street from my apartment.
sorry
Excuse me, I'm going to be decorated. I'm getting a medal. I'm getting a medal from the temple. A medal, honor medal. Okay.
มีบัตเกอร์ดีๆ
ฮะ
รู้สึกตลาด
โอเคwe have get new one
Yeah, we need new pens.
yeah okay I give you
ตลาด
I'm almost afraid to say anything. If we talk, you'll be shocked. I hope I don't get shocked. Shocked? I hope there's no electric shock. Shock. So if you suddenly see me, you know I got shocked. So I hope that doesn't happen. Amaze, stun, shock, awe, and surprise. Okay. Well. Whoa. The pen of pens. Okay, if you worked for a newspaper or a TV news channel, something like that, these would be very important words. Interview. 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 B, not woo, 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 B, interview. Story. Story. Writer. Writer. Editor. Editor. Publisher. Publisher. Right, publisher. Editor, interview, story, writer, editor, publisher. What is a writer? Yeah, well, first of all, a writer would be a person with a pen in his hand writing. He is a writer. But a lot of times it refers to somebody that writes stories for a newspaper, or writes a book, a novel, or a non-fiction book, a true story about some history or something that occurred 100 years ago. He's writing a book about the First World War. He is a history writer. A writer? What is a story? It's like a story, right? Exactly. A story is a story. Yeah, a story can be an article or a written a tale about a certain thing that occurred. A story about something that happened in World War I. He wrote a history of World War I. He told the story of World War I. He wrote a fiction novel about a situation that occurred in Spain last year or something like that. A story or you can tell a story, make up a story. Just make up something that happened or didn't happen, and a fiction.
Can I say a story?
News. Report.
News.
Tell me a story.
With my friend.
A story about what happened with your friends?
Yeah.
Yeah. A story can be almost anything. I can tell you, it's a very interesting story what happened when I flew out from Singapore to Bangkok. It was a very interesting story about what happened on the plane. You know, something like that. Or a story about your experience 2 years ago when you visited Myanmar or something like that. A very interesting story. A tale, a relation, a telling of an event that occurred, or maybe just made up, fiction. Something that's made up, fiction, not necessarily true. It didn't happen, it's a fiction. And nonfiction would be true. It's not made up, it actually happened. A nonfiction book about World War I. What actually happened in World War I? Nonfiction. Interview.
Question.
Right. When you deal with, interview a person, let's say, you are asking him to report on a certain situation. What happened? Did you see the accident? Yes, I saw oh, well then, what happened? And so the reporter is interviewing the witness to find out what happened, to talk back and forth, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. Talking back and forth to find out what happened in a certain situation. I'd like to interview you about your experience in meeting the King of Thailand. Oh, okay. Well, I was very honored, and go on and on and on. Or I'd like to interview you about what you saw at the airport when the plane landed and ran off the runway. What happened? And then the person would be interviewed back and forth as to what he saw or knows. Interview. Story, the tale of what happened. Let me tell you a story about my trip to New York or something like that. Editor. An editor would be a person who is in charge of a group of writers, let's say, and they present what they've written to the editor who looks at it. It's a little too long. I think it has to be shorter. Oh, and you misspelled 2 words here. But otherwise, no problem. Just make it a little shorter and correct the spelling. And the editor has reviewed the story and says it's okay. We'll go with it. No problem. So the editor looks over the story of the writer, corrects it or changes it, or says it's fine, no problem, and then presents it to the publisher, the person who prints and distributes the document. A book, a publisher of a book, or the publisher of the Bangkok Post newspaper, or the New York Times, the publisher, prints it and distributes it around to everybody. The publisher, the editor, the writer, the story. So the reporter interviews the witness. Then he writes the story. He writes the story of the interview. He presents it to the editor of the newspaper, for example. The editor reviews the story. Fine, excellent, best I've ever seen. And he presents it to the publisher, and the next day it's out all over Bangkok in the paper, the newspaper, or on television. A lot of, obviously today, television too. So you would have an interview, yes, what did you see, write, edit it, and publish it. And the next day, out all over. Any questions about those words? Interview, ask back and get the answers, ask the question, get the answer, ask the question. Story, the tale, the presentation of the information that you developed to write the story. You write the story, present it to the editor, he reviews it and gives it to the publisher, and woof, out into the streets.
Interviewer and interviewee.
Interviewer and interviewee. The interviewer would be the person asking the question. Yeah. And if I'm asking you the questions, you are the interviewee. Just as yesterday we discussed the word employer. The employer hires the employee. Interviewee, employee, interviewer, and employer. I forgot what I was saying. So that it would be right. It's so interviewer and E. Person being interviewed.